You see this? This is Laravel's documentation. I mean, it would be if my printer was working, which is not, because it's massive, like destroy your printer massive. Now, I like to think that I know myself around Laravel pretty well. I've been working with it for many years now. But here's the thing. Every time I dive into the docs, I discover something new that makes me go, wait, Laravel can do this? So I had this idea. What if I sat down and read through the entire documentation, every single page? I mean, not here, but here. But you get it. I mean, it sounds stupid, but I think it will be worth it. I will go through it all and share all of the interesting things and hidden gems that I discover along the way with you. Let's do this. All right, I think I'm good to go. It's now 10 a.m. I assume that this will take me like 3-4 hours, probably, maybe a little bit more. Let's see how it goes. I have something to drink. I will do some breaks. And yeah, let's just get started here. Where are we here? Documentation. Here we go. We are not starting with the prologue. We don't need this. We are starting with getting started, installation. And yeah, meet Laravel. Why Laravel? Okay, here we go. Why Laravel? There are a variety of... Okay, this is interesting. I think I already knew this, but maybe I missed it. So for your environment file, you use values which are mostly string values, like some keys. But there are some keywords that you can use here, which you can read here, which are reserved and will be translated to different values, like booleans. What else do we have? Empty strings and null. Okay, that's interesting. So when we're talking about configuration values, we can use the facade or an helper to get configuration values. But when you use the facade, there are also helpers where you can define that this should be a string, an integer, float, boolean, or an array. And if the value that you get back is not the same type, this will throw an exception. I think this can be very useful, and I didn't know this. So yeah, something new that I learned already. So good. Okay, this is also interesting. If you're using the maintenance mode in Laravel, so you don't want users to have access to application, you set your application to maintenance mode, which you can do with PHP Artisan down. And the way that this works, this will create a file in your application. And then Laravel checks if this file is given, then it doesn't show the page application, it shows the maintenance page, which works perfectly. But since it's creating a file, this approach does not work if you have multiple servers. So there's another way you can achieve this to make this work with multiple servers, which is by setting the app maintenance driver to cache. And then you need to define the store like a database, which all of the servers have access to. And then this approach also works for multiple servers. Pretty cool. Okay, almost 45 minutes in. I just finished the getting started section. Yes. And I'm now moving on to architecture concepts. And I got a feeling that this will take a little bit longer than I expected. But let's keep going. Okay, this method I didn't know about. So we are currently in the section of the service container, and this section is about binding to the container. And I already knew that there is a bind method, of course, but there's also a BindIf method. So this means you can bind something to the container if it wasn't binded yet from somewhere else already. I think this is quite a useful method. I need to check if this is used somewhere else in the framework as well. But I guess it's mostly useful if you want to check for yourself if something was already binded. If not, I want to bind this now through this service. Now we know of that. And of course, there is something connected to this. Bind a singleton if. So you can bind a singleton, but you can also bind a singleton if only if this wasn't been done before. Similar to the BindIf method, which I just found out. So another method that I just found out. Pretty cool. Okay, this is pretty cool too. We are here in the section where we're talking about resolving dependencies, and sometimes your dependency is not resolvable because you need to provide some specific values. And there is now this MakeWith method where you can say we want, in this case, the transistor class to be resolved, but we need to provide an ID, which we can do here with a second argument and an array, which I think is pretty cool because you will run into these situations. I just got back from a short lunch break and it's time to continue my journey here. I just finished facades. And next, let's go to the basics. I guess it's never too late to learn more about the basics or just to refresh your memory. Okay, so that's pretty cool here. I'm in the basic chapter about routes, and I knew that you could use regular expression constraints for defining parameters in your route. So for example, here we have a name and we want to make sure that this regular expression is being used. So I knew about that. But later down here, you can see that we have some helper methods here where we can say, for example, where number, so ID should be a number, where alphanumeric, name should be alphanumeric. Also pretty cool where UUID, so this ID, this parameter here, needs to be an UUID. So this is a constraint for this parameter. And yeah, there are even more with where ULID and where in. So yeah, a lot of more methods than I thought we have here while defining constraints for your route parameters. That's also really nice on the request. I think I've seen this before, but I forgot about it. So instead of just getting a specific input like the name of a form or something, you can also tell that you want this value in a specific type. So for example, you could say the name should be a string, which we do here, or the per page value should be an integer. So you can type it because often you want to type it to a specific type, and especially between strings and integers, you have sometimes the issue where you want to have a specific type. And while getting this from the request, it turns out you can do this very easily. Oh, and even better, this also works for Booleans and for dates. Dates, I think, is really cool to get a carbon instance if it is a date and if it can be matched to a date. Pretty cool. Okay, this one is pretty interesting. We are talking here about plate templating and we are rendering views for collection. And there is this method each where you can provide a view name and then a collection. And then I believe you get a view for each item in the collection. I think so, but we need to give this a look. This sounds pretty cool. Let us try this. So let's create a scenario where this method could be useful. So I'm here inside an unordered list. And here we want to have some specific list items. And for this, I already have a hero list item. And for this to work, I'm going to provide a user. And let's just go with the first one for now. And let's take a look what this looks like in the browser. Okay, so we have one user here, but in this case, we want to have a list with all of our users. Okay, so what we can do, we can make an for each with all of our users as user. And that's basically it. Okay, let's take a look at this now. And when we refresh, you can see we get all the users, but with the same name. So let's switch this now. Now we need to change this to just provide the current user. And here you can see now we have our list of users. So a pretty common use case, we have one view here, which we want to use for a bunch of different models that we iterate over, in this case user. And now there is this shortcut which we can use. So we get rid of the for each. And instead the include, we're doing an each. The first argument is the same, is the list. The second argument is a collection of our users, like this. And the third argument is the name of the variable which we are using inside our view here, which is just user. Let's refresh, and you can see this is still working. Yes, we have our list of users. And yeah, that's this shortcut that I didn't know of. And yeah, maybe you learned something new, that you can use this at each in order to use for a specific collection the same view and provide a specific variable. Okay, this is something that I had no idea that this existed. So we're talking about templating, about blade, about views, and about blade components. And you can pass data to components. And the typical ways, let's check this out again, is something like this, where you define you want a message, and then you provide the message like this. But it turns out there is a short syntax that I had no aware of that this existed. Scroll down here again. Yeah, this one. So you can see instead of writing user ID and then the user ID, you can just provide the user ID with colon and the $sign, and this works as a short attribute syntax, which I had no idea that this existed, which I think is pretty cool. Did you know that? I gotta move on. Okay, I just finished the section getting started. It's now, I don't know, I have no phone here. I think it's around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, no idea if I can finish this today, but I will try. The last section here was about logging. Not much new for me, just I really like Laravel Pale, which is an application that you can run in the command line where you can just tail log messages. So you just run it, and then if any log messages are happening, you see them in real time. An application by Nuno Maduro, which I really like. Okay, after getting started, it's now time to dig deeper. Another section with a lot to go through. I think I need a little switch here, so I'm going to switch to dark mode here for a little change. So let's move on. I'm currently reading about Artisan commands, and when defining option, there's something that I didn't know that you could do, which is defining a shortcut. So you just provide the shortcut, you just separate the shortcut with a pipe from the longer form name, and then this would be the shortcut to use this option. I didn't know that. Good to know. Oh, and this is also new to me. It seems like I've never tried to put arrays or make input as a race. So it turns out you can use this asterisk here, and then you can provide multiple values like an array. Good to know. Okay, something else about Artisan commands which I didn't know. So there's an interface called PromptsForMissingInput. And I've seen this in the Laravel code because I've worked on a PR using this, but I didn't know that you could use this for your commands as well. So I guess we'll check it out together. Let's try this out by creating a new console command, and let's call this create user command. All right, so user create, and then let's say we want the name, and then let's say we want an email. Okay, create a new user, and here we're just printing out new user, this argument name, and hyphen, and here then this argument email. Okay, I think that's good. Let's try this out. PHP Artisan user create, and then the name is Christoph, and my email is christoph@laravel.com. Okay, this is what we expect. We have here two arguments which we provide, which we have access to, and then we just print this out. And now the question is, we have now this interface which you can implement, which is called PromptsForMissingInput. So the idea is now, so I've used this before while I was working on a PR for Laravel, but I thought you could only use this internally. I have no idea, you could use it here as well, but it makes now way more sense. So prompts for missing input. So let's say we trigger this without the arguments. And now what we assume what is happening now is that we get asked about those two inputs. Let's try this out. PHP Artisan user create, and voila, here we are. Now we are getting asked what is the name. And the way this is working now, by only at level sees here we have an argument which is mandatory, and we haven't provided it. But since we're using this prompts for missing input interface, Laravel is smart enough to see, okay, let's ask about this with Laravel prompts. And it also is smart enough to say this, what is the name? Let's use my name, Christoph, and now also what is the email for the second argument. I mean, how cool is this? Let's try this again, Christoph at Laravel.com. Here we go, and we get our output. So, I mean, this is really cool. You don't have to ask here anything about what is the name, what is the email. This automatically works by just using this prompts for missing interface. Please check this out. Okay, this is also pretty cool. We're talking here currently, or I'm reading about Laravel prompts, which I love and I use a lot. Perfect feature created by Chess Archer from our team. And there seems there's an autocomplete feature, which I have never heard of or never seen. I guess we need to try this out as well. Let's do this. All right, so auto-completion with Laravel console commands. Let's see what we can do here. So we have here a simple command about you. Tell me something about you, like your favorite coding language. This is our starting point. So this is pretty simple. We're just asking, and if we take a look what this looks like, PHP Artisan, about you, we get asked, what is your favorite coding language? Let's say PHP here, and selected language is PHP. Okay, nothing fancy so far. So let's see what we can do. Instead of the ask method, we can now use this anticipate method, which we've seen in the docs. And now here the second argument is an array. And here we can provide some values that will be auto-completed. So let's start with PHP. Maybe let's insert a Go, I don't know. Maybe JavaScript. All right, let's try this again. PHP Artisan about you. What is your favorite language? Everything looks the same. So when I now try to write Rust, everything will be the same. We can still use any input that we want to write here. But when we try again, and now I start with a P, you can see now that I get auto-completion. I can with tab just use PHP. Or let's try it again, PHP Artisan about you. If I start with a G, I already see Go. If I start with a J, I already see JavaScript. So this is auto-completion in a way. Let's get rid of this. So this is where you want to provide auto-completion, but still want the user to provide different options. So because if you wouldn't allow this, you would use a multiple choice question here, which would be way better. But if you want to let the user also write different answers, you can use this. And if this providing an array is not enough for you, you can also provide here a function which gets the input. Yeah. So, and now you have this closure here where you can do whatever you want. In the end, you will still have to provide an array, which you have to return it, but you can talk to your database. Maybe you have all the different languages inside the database that you can check there. And the way this works now, with every new character, I think this closure will be called again. So this means the more you type, the better auto-completion you will get. So this is, something that I didn't know. Now I know about it and I won't forget it. So make sure you don't forget anticipate method to get auto-completion for your Artisan commands. This sounds pretty cool as well. So I'm here in the section about cache and caching and cache remember function, which I use a lot. And I remember Taylor mentioning the cache flexible method on Laracon US last year, where I was live in Dallas. So I've never tried it. I'm not sure how it works, but it sounds pretty cool. So I think we should give it a try too. So we have here an example where we're getting active user count, which is a heavy operation application. This takes some seconds and we want to cache it. So we're using the cache remember function. We're providing the key. And then we say we want to cache it for maybe 10 seconds, but not longer because the data gets updated. And let's see if this works. I have here my beautiful active user. Let's refresh. This takes now a couple of seconds, which you can see here at the top. And then we get a fresh calculation. And if you refresh now, you can see it's super fast now because now it's coming from the cache for the next 10 seconds. And then now you can see this is loading now again because the 10 seconds is over. And again, the next few iteration, this is super fast. So this is a good solution, but there's an issue because there's always a user which has to do this trigger, which triggers the loading from the data again. So this always happens, and someone has to be the user to do this, to make this work. So this works, but there is now a better solution. Let me show you. We now have another method here, which is called cache flexible. And now the second argument here is now not an integer anymore. The second, it's an array. So and here we need to provide two parameters. So the second one, let's start with the second one, is similar to before, is the maximum of seconds that our value is being cached, 10 seconds as before. But now we have this kind of first argument, which is a threshold. So this means between 5 and 10 seconds, the user still gets the data from the cache. So it's the cached version, but it triggers in the background that the data is being reloaded. So this means the next user will already see the new data. Let me show you. It gets easier when I show it to you. All right, we're starting by refreshing here. This takes now a couple of seconds because this is loading. Then the next couple of seconds, we can see the same data which we get here, the same number. But now after 5 seconds, we're triggering a reload and we get the new number, but we still get the new number from the cache. So we didn't have to wait that long. If we now are waiting like more than 10 seconds, let's give this a few more seconds and then refresh. Now we can see everything is loading again and the data now comes from a fresh calculation. But again, the next time users come in, they get the cache data, or the next one, gets now the new data, but also from the cache. So that's cache flexible, a way of caching data, but still making sure that every user gets the same experience. They get the data from the cache. So as long as people are coming in, the data will always come from the cache and it will be reloaded after a specific amount. And the way how this works is with the deferred function level, which makes sure that we reload the data after the request has been sent back to the browser. So this means you don't have to wait for it, but still the next user gets fresh data from the cache. Wait, what? I'm just reading through the authentication category of the documentation, and it looks like you can add a basic auth middleware to any route, and this will prompt you the basic authentication login that we know to enter your credentials, and this way you can log in with a specific user. I've never seen this. I've never tried this. We have to try this now. I'm here in a brand new Laravel application built with the React Starter Kit, and I have a user here and can log in. My name and password, and here we go. We are logged in. Okay, this is working as we are assuming it would be. But now let's try what we found. So we're going to copy this route here. Let's make this a closure-based one. All right, we don't need a name, but we want the middleware with auth basic. That's what we want to try out, right? And let's say if this works, we want to redirect to a route to the dashboard. I think this would be something that might be useful. And let's change the name here to new login. All right, let's give this a try. New login, here we go. Oh yeah, okay, this already seems to be working. Let's provide my credential, christoph@me.com, my super secret password. And here we are logged in on the dashboard. Oh my God, this really works. I've never seen this before. I'm not even sure if I really would want to use it, but the fact that you can use basic authentication instead of providing the login for you, I think that's really cool. Now let's also try out, let's see if we log out. Okay. We can log in again. All right, but what happens if I now still go to a new login? Because what I assume what happens is that we can still get access to the page. Yes, we do. So this means the credentials are still stored and still being used here, and I can still log in without providing the credential again. Oh my God. Yeah, super cool, super amazing. I would love to know if you have used this already. Am I the only one missing this? But yeah, that's pretty cool that we want to provide a login system to your application without providing a login page. Okay, I'm currently reading the database section of the documentation, and I found an Artisan command, PHP Artisan DB, which I've never seen and never tried. So we gotta try this right now. All right, let's give this a try. PHP Artisan DB for database. And yeah, voila, we are connected to MySQL here locally on my machine. Let's try this out with select now here. Yeah, you can see this is working. I get the current time. Okay, pretty cool. Let's switch to another side. What about when I'm connected? What about when I have an SQLite connection? PHP Artisan DB connected to SQLite, SQLite. Okay, yeah, pretty cool. I had no idea about this. PHP Artisan DB. You can use it to connect to your database. This I find interesting. I'm currently reading through the Eloquent documentation, which I believe is one of the biggest part of the documentation in the framework. And it's already almost 5 p.m., so I haven't done any other work than reading the documentation till now. Don't tell Taylor. That's my work for today. And yeah, still a lot for me to read. But here I found something interesting while reading through many-to-many relationships. So when you have a many-to relationship, you have an intermediate table who sits between. Like in this example, we have users, we have podcast, and in between we have an intermediate table with the ID of the user and the podcast. And in this case, this is a subscription. But usually when you working with a pivot table, so if you try in this case, let's see what's the example here. Yeah, if we try through a specific podcast model to get data from the intermediate table, by default you have to do a podcast, then arrow pivot, and then you can call some fields of the pivot table. But here I just found out that you can define that your pivot table has a different name. You can define this when defining the relationship, and that instead of writing pivot here, you can provide like here, podcast, subscription, and then get the created at. I didn't know that. I think this is really cool and this is very useful because I never liked writing pivot. I think it's better if you give this a name, and subscription in this case would be a very good name for this. Okay, I still got some chapters to read, so let's move on. Good morning, it's a new day. Let's start this new day. Let's get some light in here. So I couldn't finish reading the docs yesterday, so I'm starting today. It's almost 9 a.m. in the morning. I still have to go through Eloquent, which is big, then testing packages, and then API documentation. So I'm currently taking a look at relationships, and yeah, let's keep going and let's see what I will find today. Okay, that's interesting. Already found something new which I didn't know of. It seems you can define custom relationships or dynamic relationships which you can define on runtime. So you don't define them on the model, but directly in a service provider. And I've never seen this. I've never done this. So let's give this a try. In this application, I have profiles. So let's grab here the first one. This is a profile about me. And then we have users as well. Let's also import this here. All right, and this is my user. But if I try to get now the profile of my user, you can see that this is not working because I haven't defined the relationship yet. So let's do this here inside the user. This is about a profile, and this is now a has1 relationship. Return has1 profile. I'm providing the class. Okay, let's give this a try. Let's run this again. And yeah, fair enough, we now get the profile back. So this is working. But now let's think about a scenario where the profile is a model which comes from a package. So you have access to your profile, but you don't have access to this user class here. So you can't define this relationship here. So what you can do instead is you can define a dynamic relationship. This is something which is typically done inside a service provider. I'm here for this test showing this inside the app service provider. So on the user class, we can now use a method resolve relation using. Now the name of the relation is profile. Second argument is a callback where we get the user model has1 profile and the class. All right, let's try this now as well. You can see this is now also working. So we haven't defined the relationship in the model. We have now defined it in a service provider. And as you can see, this is not something that you would use a lot, but in some cases, for example, while working on a package, or maybe you have some other scenarios where this will work, but now this relationship is being defined on the fly. But as you can see, it works as well. So yeah, that's resolve relation using to create a dynamic relationship. Okay, this is not something new, but I just saw that Abigail Outwell-Taylor's wife also made it into the documentation, which I believe is really a nice touch because we always say she's like the biggest supporter of Laravel right from the beginning. So yeah, everybody loves her. So great to see her name here as well. But let's move on. I'm still in, let's see where I'm currently reading factories on the Eloquent subject. And then last two chapters, testing and API documentation. Let's do this. I just finished a section about browser testing in Laravel with Dusk, and I haven't Dusk in a while, and it's crazy how long this page is. There's so much that you can do with Dusk, so it was a good reminder for myself to give Dusk another try soon because there is really a lot that you can do with Dusk. So back for me now, database and marking on testing. Let's go. I'm just reading through database assertions for testing, which I really like and I use a lot. And I just found these two, assert database count and assert database empty. And that rang a bell and I wasn't sure. I think I contributed them, but I wasn't sure. So I had to check. And here we are, my PRs for Laravel. I made 12 so far. It's not too many, but still some of the things that you're using is from me, which I'm still proud of. And here we have add assert database empty helper and assert database count assertion. So two things here that you're probably using are from me, which I'm really proud of. So yeah, make sure to test your database. Wow, that was a lot. My brain still feels like I just ran a marathon, which I maybe could do under 6 hours, different to the docs. Not possible. But honestly, totally worth it. You know, it's crazy, even after all these years of working with Laravel, there's still so much stuff to discover. And the best part is, it all has been right there in the docs in front of me the whole time, just waiting for someone like me to actually read it. If you found these features as interesting as I did, maybe hit that like and subscribe button because I'm pretty sure you don't want to miss our next videos. There's always more to learn, right? And hey, maybe next time I'll actually get that printer fixed. Or maybe not. See you the next time. Bye.